Hey guys, in this episode of Behind the Code, we talk with Ethan Totten, who is a PHP developer. He's been a developer for about 6 years. He also used to work together, coincidentally. So if we seem a little casual with each other, that might be why. And we talk about PHP in the past, PHP in the future, PHP in the present, how to get started with PHP. We cover a whole mess of topics about PHP and lots of other great stuff. Lots of fun stuff. I always enjoy talking with people I know for these interviews. It's just like I feel like it comes off very well. So I think you guys will enjoy it quite a bit. And if you want to get some PHP tutorials or you want to follow Ethan, you can go to his website, selftotten.com. That's SELFTOTTN.com and check out his stuff there. Enjoy.
Code everything.
That's
So
always
yeah,
exciting. I always stay up to hey man. Look at you see these programmer thing. This is a programmer credential right here. You got your little mug of caffeine.
mug of caffeine with some weird decoration on it. Like,
Yeah, man. Mine says
hey,
happy holidays. It's not even holidays. It's holidays.
you Jewish
Got
people.
that 99-cent factor to it, man. But all right. So I think we talked a little bit about what I wanted to cover today, which is going to be PHP in 2017 or just PHP in general, what it's good for.
Absolutely nothing. Wow.
Yeah.
Good God, yeah.
Which is something I'm like struggling with to learn, by the way.
Okay.
Like we use PHP at my work, so everywhere. Like I was like, oh, but anyhow, so I guess let's go ahead and get started before we ramble on here.
Well,
All right, so would you mind introducing yourself and a little bit of your experience?
okay. My name is Ethan Totten. I have been developing for about 6 years now. I kind of got into it because I was looking for a job outside of college. I have a history and poli-sci degree, and you really can't do much with a history and poli-sci degree, except like look for other jobs. So kind of got into blogging a little bit, and all like the blog platforms just I didn't really like. So I was just kind of curious like what it took to get into blogging. Started with like static HTML, like started doing it that way. It's like there's got to be something better than this. So then kind of got more into like WordPress and Joomla and Drupal, and from there it kind of just like snowballed into more like heavy frameworks. First I got into like CodeIgniter, and then went from CodeIgniter to heavier thing like Laravel really, and kind of yeah, I've been working in the industry for about like 5 years really, and currently work for a e-commerce company out in Santa Monica, and it is fantastic.
Nice. So it sounds like, and I'm not sure, but you've been working with PHP for a while now, right? Let's actually talk about PHP. Let's do that.
Okay.
So you've been working in PHP for about 4 or 5 years now, from the sounds of it. What have you kind of seen is the general use for PHP for people who maybe like never touched it before?
The use for it is blogs. Like I mean, with WordPress, that framework, a lot of people just use that for blogs. It's really pretty much like now in the new 2016 architecture wise, or 2016 2017 is a lot of microservices. So my sub services like that only do one thing, like so they'll be connecting to one certain database like auth or like your MySQL store, and just serve APIs. So that's a lot of what PHP is used for nowadays. It's just a simple microservice you can throw up. It's scalable in case you need multiple at the same time, like in your cloud computing. So that's pretty much what it's used for nowadays.
And that's exactly what we use it for in my work. We basically use it as API to make endpoints for APIs and retrieve data and send data.
Yep.
And that because I always found it kind of curious because I've never touched PHP before and I had no idea what we were going to be using on my work. But that is the only thing we use it for. Is that common in your experience?
Um, Currently, yes. Where I currently work, we have a couple of microservices that all use PHP. Where you and I have previously worked, no. But that's just because it's a different architecture. Other places, have started to get into a little bit more of the PHP endpoint architecture, but there's also a lot like of competing languages, or I don't want to say competing languages. There's a lot um, more robust languages that are starting to do endpoints as well as PHP and are as scalable as PHP, like Go and Rust.
Nice. What sort of changes have you kind of seen in the last couple of years in PHP, or you think are going to happen moving forward with it? Is it still going to be kind of in demand? It seems to go quite hand in hand with JavaScript, and in my experience, anyhow.
Yeah, I mean it's open source, so you can find anything you need or want on the system. Um, that's kind of the main like reason a lot of people use it. I think is just like, oh, I need a quick and easy language I don't have to learn in 30 years. Like C Sharp, it takes a lot of learning. Yeah, that's now open source, but it just takes a lot of learning and getting used to. Um, Changes more recently is a lot more of a strict type architecture, or really framework or language. You can declare now what you have coming in and out of your methods and classes. So when you say like you have a method that's like get me orders for a certain customer, you want to make sure that customer ID is always an integer. So you can typecast that customer ID and it'll always be an integer, or else the whole thing fails. That's something that PHP has never really had. It's always been this anonymous class or anonymous variable language where there's really no type to variables. You got to go through all this validation in order to get types and variables to make sure like you don't crash a database. So that's something that like in the last year since PHP 7 has really like pushed forward with that system. Pretty much it's gone from a lot of last 5 years when I've been doing it, it's gone from a lot more functional bases where like you'll have like and then now it's a lot more object oriented that will MVC architecture that will return, you know, views versus like having PHP and HTML and making queries in the middle of a page.
Yeah, it's I don't fully, so I've just recently been diving into it, and what I found, because I learned by making projects, that's how I learned.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very hard to get started with a project in PHP. Like, it seems to be a little bit of a steep learning curve for people who maybe aren't familiar with it. Is that just me? Am I just like bad, or do you think there's a learning curve with it?
No, I think the other day when you first asked me thinking about it, and the hardest part of PHP is actually getting started. It is hard to make a simple page app with nothing. Like, especially if you're going from front end stuff where you can just do front end stuff on your local box and then go to a web browser and see it right there. You have to set up a server for it. You have to set up pretty much a server and like make sure that the right version of PHP is in there. And you have to pretty much know like Linux in order to really set it up. There are tools like Cloud9 does a pretty good job, cloud9.io, where you can, it's a simple, easy server. You can see your output right there. Even like Dreamweaver, I think in the last like 3 years has really stepped up their game because it used to be awful. And now it's like, oh, you can actually see what you're doing on PHP. And like, if you want to just echo variables, dump variables, it's all right there in Dreamweaver. That's the hardest part of PHP is the setup. 100%.
Yeah, like I remember having to set up WAMP and then XAMPP and all this sort of nonsense trying to get it to work, and it did. But when you're used to just popping open Notepad, it's a little bit different, especially for people who are on the junior level.
Yeah, it's WAMP. WAMP is a little bit harder than like MAMP, just because it's two different systems. Like the way that NTFS, I believe, is what Windows is based off of, and then Mac is now a Linux kernel. So Mac is a lot easier to program on versus Windows. You have to do a lot more and juggle and go through a couple hoops.
Now, if people, I always find it great when someone's working and they learn and whatnot. What would kind of your advice be for someone who's like working a full-time job, but they find out they it's not for them and they're trying to get into software or get into web design or whatever it may be? What would kind of be your advice to give them kind of an edge of learning?
I guess just kind of like, yeah, you're stuck at your job for 8 hours a day, but like just find time and in your evening, like make sure you have time to actually do something. And like you said, like you do projects, I do projects still, just something that I can learn, something that I can grow from. Really, whatever they want to do, find it, like try it out. If that's still what they want to do, like software wise, great. Keep learning, keep growing. There's always like the internet, and like especially like the PHP world, there's a big community. Stacks Overflow is overflowing with PHP like posts, just because the different versions, people always have trouble with something. There's always like a lot of frameworks. Laravel, for instance, has a huge community. They have Laracast, which is a tutorial driven uh, I, podcast videocast, I guess you could say. That just is a bunch of tutorials on how to like use a framework. You can find anything you want on there. They also have their own forum about like things that go on inside of Laravel and like weird things that happen. So yeah, just keep learning. Don't stop. Find time to learn. If it's a weekend, like great. Like one of the first projects I ever did was a simple like rock paper scissors lizard Spock thing, because I was just, it's a randomizer. You have all the tools you need in PHP. Just do it. Like, and then you can always go back and refactor and reiterate on it, and that also helps you learn too. Because then like a month later, you're going to learn a lot more than what you originally knew. So if you go back and you redo it, it always helps you. It sees where you were, it sees where you are, it sees that there is progress. So it's not just like, oh, I did this little app, whatever. You always have something to go back and see, like, oh, look, I've done progress, or I've made progress.
Yeah, it's always, some people get a little weird about like, should I post my stuff on GitHub when I'm just starting learning? I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because it will show your progress. And it's like, as someone who has been making coding videos for a year and a half, some of the videos I have, I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, man, what the fuck? Like, right. I can't believe I put this shit up on the internet.
What's great about GitHub too, and I don't know if people who are like recruiters don't, but I'm sure like people who are the hiring manager at a software engineer place, they'll probably look and see like, oh, this is like at your commits, and see like, oh, this is what it used to be and this is what it was. Like GitHub's great. I love GitHub. I love the features of it. And even like they have a little spec chart that sees like, so it shows like April through December of that whole project, and shows like when you committed the most and when you really worked on it.
Yeah. So we're talking about projects. Are you working on anything interesting right now?
I just finally I have a plethora of domains I just haven't ever used or put anything on them. I just put up a blog, no post on it yet. Built the blog in Laravel just because there's this package I wanted to use. So I just played around with that package a little bit, put it up. Like I said, no post yet. I also started to do a Secret Santa application, mainly because I wanted to work a lot more with APIs and Vue.js, because the Vue or React.js is hot. And so I'm like, all right, let's give this a shot. And yeah, that's pretty much the main project I'm working on right now. Works pretty great. So I actually been spending about like 12-hour days there sometimes.
Nice. Yeah. You gotta have that mentality, especially when you're trying to get your foot in the door. And that's what makes a great senior developer, right? Or a junior developer become a senior developer, is really enjoying it. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to ever take the time to learn any additional skills.
Right. If you don't love it, there's no point in doing it. Yeah. And I think that trumps money, that trumps time, that trumps effort a lot of times. I mean, obviously you have bills to pay, but if you love doing it and love learning, it's software engineering is great.
Yeah, the money will come in software engineering.
Yeah. Like this week I've been learning Elasticsearch and how to connect to Elasticsearch clusters, and it's awesome. Something I never thought I would know how to do, but now I'm like, oh, this is pretty easy.
Was there any topics that you wanted to cover? I know we talked a little bit about PHP and what to expect moving forward, but anything that was important to you that you think we could dive into?
I think we can dive a little bit more on the APIs. Like, well, two more things. I guess we can talk a little bit more in depth on like startup, because I think that's where a lot of people get like hung up on. Not startups, but starting up with PHP. I mean, there's a lot of tutorials out there. Just find the right one. Find the one that fits you. You'll probably need to learn a little bit about servers. If you're running a Windows box, Mac box, just put up MAMP for a while. Know where to point MAMP. know how to do it. Cloud9.io has a PHP server built into it. I Yeah, so there's a lot of things you can do, or just even buy a server, buy a DigitalOcean server for $5. Find some kernel that already has everything built for you, and just put it out there.
Nice. And so with APIs, because that seems to be one of like the main thing is like to make a simple REST API with PHP, and there's frameworks for it as well. Now, when it comes to frameworks, like for instance, I use Cake PHP at my work because that's what my boss says it's doing. What's kind of your take on doing it just in pure PHP or using frameworks or libraries?
I love frameworks. I know that they get a bad rap a lot of times because, it's look at it, everyone can see what your code is pretty much, but like really they don't. And good frameworks are written in a way where you can't break into them. Like there's CSRF protection, there's SQL injection protection already built into them. So they're really hard to like. Otherwise, you have to do that yourself if you're talking to like a database. You can do it yourself. I worked at a place that has done it themselves, and it's a pain in the butt. Really, like from start to finish. Like the hardest part of it really is the routing. Like you have /users that gets you all your users, and you have users /ID, which should return a user with a given ID of whatever you put on the URI. So it's really just like ease of it in a lot of frameworks. Like Symfony, super easy to use once you get it up in terms of like frameworks and like just building APIs for it.
Nice. What's the name of your new up and coming hot blog that will eventually be very active?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's totally gonna be active. Selftotten.com.
Self-Totten?
Yeah, Totten.
No,
my last name.
I know. I love it, dude. I love everything about it, man.
I wish I came up with that, but stupid Mike.
Oh, damn. It's too clever, that one.
I know.
Oh man. Did you ever finish your game that you're working on?
Oh, the degrees of separation one?
Yeah.
No, I mean like the code's there and it works, but it's just like I can't figure out a good UI for it, and that's the hard part about being a back-end person. It's just like you put everything into Bootstrap, and after that, it's just all like, I can't really think of anything else. Like if it doesn't fit into like a Bootstrap, column 12, you can't really. I'm like, man, I'm done.
Yeah.
So
I've been learning. I've been messing with layout now and like getting away from the Bootstrap column grid, and it's all the same, really.
Have you been using like Flex at all?
Yeah. That's what I've been using is Flex.
Yeah. There's one I looked into. It's actually on the selftotten.com. Is called Bulma, Bulma. And it's literally all Flex. There's no JavaScript. It's just straight CSS, which is very interesting.
This we're using, I believe, because it goes hand in hand with Angular Material, which is what we're building part of our application in. So it's built into it, and it works great. It's wonderful. It's just to me, I couldn't tell you why it's better than Bootstrap's column grid or whatnot, but it does the same thing. So
right, I think Bootstrap in 4 is moved to Flex, versus right now it's all percent wides. So it's like you get some issues if you ever want to customize something, versus Flex is pretty easy to customize.
Any final thoughts you want to give people about PHP? That'd be appreciated as well.
Yeah, if you have any like desire to learn it. Reach out to me. Or like I have my GitHub. It's Thethan, THETHAN. Yep, that's right. Find it there. Find it. You can reach out through Dylan. He'll provide probably my username or something. Put it all in description.
Yeah. I'll put it in there, not you. Okay, it's all right. I'm going to put the video up.
Good. So yeah, just really don't be afraid to learn it. Like, yeah, there's that big hump of starting to learn it and like starting to get it up. But once you get it up, it's pretty simple. I still have problems a lot of times with like if I'm on a new box or I'm like, how do I start PHP? And there's 100 tools. Google is your best friend in this instance. Like if you're just starting to learn it, like, oh, I have a Windows. How do I get started with PHP 7? Oh, I have Windows. How do I get started with PHP whatever? How do I deploy WordPress? it's just learn how to Google. That's almost your best tool in a lot of cases.
Special thanks to our sponsor, Dev Mountain. If you're interested in a coding bootcamp, why don't you check them out where they include housing alongside their tuition so you can get up, go, and immerse yourself in the environment. If you want to support me, go over to patreon.com/codingtutorials360 so we can put out more content. Thanks for watching.